Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bench to Bold. I'm Marnie.
And I'm Alisa.
And I'm super excited because we have a great guest, Alisa. So it is Samantha Daniels. Let me read to you about Samantha. She's an author. Her book is called Matchbook, published by Simon & Schuster, which was also turned into a TV show for NBC called Mismatch, starring Alicia Silverstone. She's a dating, relationship, love, and romance expert, a celebrity matchmaker, a wife, and a mom. So welcome, Samantha.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Although selfishly, I wish we were in person, but this will do for now. We're definitely long overdue for a personal reconnection, but thank you for being here. So, the show is called Bench to Bold. And one of the things that we love to ask our guests is, and just to start off the show, you are somebody that I know has lived many different moments of being bold. What does being bold mean to you? And how would you encourage people to be bold and to live a life filled with making things happen like you've done?
So I think it's important to try to be bold every single day. And the way that I think about that is that if you don't ask, you don't get. So a lot of times when I'm trying to make things happen, I just kind of go for it. And I say to myself, well, the worst thing that can happen is that someone can say no. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So a lot of times it's something where someone in my life will say, oh, that's ridiculous. That person's never going to get back to you, or that person's never going to say yes. But then a lot of times they actually do say yes, and then you're pleasantly surprised. So I think it's important that if you want something, you go after it. And Marnie had mentioned that I had a television show a while back, and that's actually how I got the television show. I talked about it, and I mentioned it to some people who I wasn't sure were going to be very receptive to it. And lo and behold, because I mentioned it, a lot of things happened. And then fast forward, I got my own TV show. So you just kind of never know what can happen.
I think that that's such great advice. I mean, being bold and asking, where does that come from? Obviously you're smart, Samantha, you're educated, you've traveled and you've done things, but when did you know that you could ask for things? When did that start with you?
Well, when I was growing up, my father was a big lawyer, and somehow when I was asking for things, I found that I needed to lawyer him. So if I wanted to convince him of something, I needed to kind of convince him. And so when I would ask for something, if he would say no, I learned very quickly, well, if I say it a different way, or if I give him 3 reasons why, then maybe he'll change his mind. And so from a very young age, I started doing that. And then fast forward, I wound up starting the debate team at my high school because I was such a good debater, because I was always able to convince people of things. And my father always told me that I could sell ice to the Eskimos, and I just was able to convince people of anything. And so I think that that's kind of where it came from a young age, that I realized that if I asked and if I tried to convince someone of something, that I might be able to do that. And I just started realizing that I was the type of person that never took no for an answer. Now, sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. So I have a young daughter, and that's kind of what I've been teaching her now, that you're going to ask and you're going to ask, you're going to ask. And sometimes you're going to get it, but sometimes you're not. And you're going to have to be okay with that too, because sometimes you just have to be able to stop and say, okay, I didn't win this round, but I'll go out there again and try next time, so it kind of all comes down to that.
I think that that's great advice. I mean, definitely, as being a mom to a girl, do you think that, how you show your daughter all the lessons that you've learned, some of those things are just super organic, but what, as a mom, do you think that you do differently than maybe you were doing when you were a young girl?
Well, with my daughter, she has a very outgoing, strong personality like myself, which I'm very blessed to have someone like that. And she's gives me a run for my money. So I think about how my father used to say, and my mother used to say that when I was young, and now I'm kind of seeing it in spades. And I think that when you're bringing up a strong daughter, you have to talk to her about her superpower, which is confidence and strength. And at the same time, let her know that in there has to be kindness and empathy and understanding of other people and kind of going after what you want, but then at the same time, being able to sit back and help other people get what they want. And so you're walking a fine line of teaching a strong girl to continue to be strong and to go after what she wants, but then at the same time to be very aware of people around her and their needs and their wants and helping them at the same time. So that's what I try to do with her every day.
That is beautiful. All right. So let's talk for a second about matchmaking. Share with everybody how you decided and then became one of like the top most sought after matchmakers. When did this happen? What made you decide that this was something, a career, and to turn it into from a hobby to a super successful business? How did that happen?
Well, I started out as a divorce attorney and I moved to New York City. And when I got here, I realized that I knew a lot of people who were all single. So I started throwing parties for my single friends just because I wanted to be social and have a good time. And at the parties, I would see people who I thought would get along well with each other. And I would introduce them to each other, like grab a girl from this side, grab a guy from that side, bring them together and say, oh, you're both from Chicago. You both like to play tennis. Talk. And I would basically do that just because I wanted to be a good hostess. And after a while, people would say to me, you know, that couple that you introduced at your party a couple weeks ago, well, they're dating. Well, they got engaged. Well, they're married. And it kept happening again and again. And I kind of wanted to have my own business. Divorce was depressing. You know, it's much better to help people find love than to help people get divorced. And so I decided to start the business. And it was a very long time ago. It was before online dating. It was before dating apps. I'm considered an OG in the matchmaking business, which is amusing to me because it feels like just yesterday that I started it, but meanwhile, it's been close to 25 years. And I just kind of put it out there. And the same thing in the beginning, you know, I got some lukewarm reception. Some people thought that I was crazy. Some people were fascinated by it. But because I stuck with it and I reached out to a lot of people, wound up getting a lot of press, I was able to start this business and just stick with it, not take no for an answer, not feel uncomfortable or upset if I got any sort of rejection. And I was able to really put my money where my mouth was and do a good job, you know. And so at the beginning, you start something because you're passionate about it and you believe in it. But then if it starts working, you actually have to be able to do it. You know, so Marnie mentioned that I'm also an author of a book. And, you know, so many people will say to me, oh, you're an author. I've always wanted to write a book, you know, and Marnie will attest to this. It's really hard to write a book and it's easy to start the book, but it's really difficult to finish the book. So when people say to you, oh, I've always wanted to write a book. I know I could write a book. That's great. We'll go write one, because they sort of dismiss the fact that you wrote a few 100-page book and what that takes and whatnot. So you really have to be able to deliver on what you're saying. And if you're passionate about it and you're good, then you can deliver. And if you're not, then you can't, you know. So I think that for me, it was a big learning curve of understanding that I actually had this intuition to be really good, understanding who goes well with whom and putting those people together and really enjoying that.
So I have a question, because my husband and I met on a dating app, and obviously it worked out. So tell me how you feel about dating apps.
Well, for dating apps, I think they're a mixed bag. At least that's how I see them. So I like the fact that they exist because I think that it gives people kind of eternal hope. So you can be out at night and you can be hoping that you'll meet someone and you got all dressed up and you felt really good about yourself and you go to a party, you go to a bar, you go to a restaurant and you have a bad night. You don't meet anybody, or the person that you were interested in wasn't interested back or whatever it is. And then you come home and you feel like crap. You know, and you're like, gosh, you know, but then you can go onto your phone and you can actually thumb through and you can see some guys or some women who seem interesting to you. So then all of a sudden you have this restored hope. Okay, maybe tomorrow's another day. I could meet someone else. Oh, I'll connect with this person. Oh, this person liked me, and it makes you feel better. So I like that aspect of it. The aspect that I don't like about it is that I think it gives people too much access. So it makes people think that there's always somebody else coming around the bend. There always could be somebody better. There always could be another person. Who else can I meet? I'm not going to settle for this person because there could be someone better. So I think that changes the dynamic of dating a lot, because if you think about it, in our grandparents' generation, for example, they dated by being introduced to people mostly through blind dates. And so if two people of that generation were introduced to each other, they really gave each other a real chance, because they knew that if they didn't give that person a chance, it could be a couple weeks, a couple months, even a year until they were introduced to somebody again. Now, fast forward to today, you're meeting so many people, or you can every single day, that you don't feel that same urgency, or you don't want to give people that same chance. And I don't like that about the apps, because I think that when you're dating, a lot of times you need to stand in place. You need to stand in place and get to know the person in front of you and see if they could really be the real contender for you or not. And the apps in some ways make people not do that.
I think for one thing, for me, when I finally went on a dating app after I had met someone at the gym, or I'd met someone, I used to cycle outside. I met someone in a cycling group. I used to work in a major medical center. I dated a couple of people within that medical center. And I found that dating someone in the gym, or dating someone that I did a sport with, or dating someone that I worked with, outside of my department, or someone being my boss, I still had to see them if things went wrong. And I feel like on a dating app, you can kind of, if you will, ghost someone or go missing or not have to see them again, right? So it was hard because, in all of three of those situations, those situations did not work out for me. However, I still wanted to go back to the same gym. I still wanted to ride my bike with the same group of people. And I still wanted to work at the medical center. But I still had to see those people. So that was, so it was nice for me for a dating app. And I waited a long time before I went on a dating app to find someone. But when I went on the dating app and I found someone that I was interested in, then I went off the dating app until maybe I weren't interested in them anymore, and then I would get back on. So I didn't confuse myself. Like you said.
I definitely think that it has its pros and its cons, and definitely what you just said, could be a positive for a lot of people. Matchmaking. So I do something completely the opposite. I'm sort of the go-between between two people. And so somebody hires me, and then I find them exactly what they're looking for. And so I become their agent, their manager, and kind of, an investigator to find the right person who has all the qualities that they're looking for. So it's a very different kind of thing where you're not interacting yourself, but you're trusting an expert to find you the right person. So for a lot of busy, successful people, what I do is very attractive to them, because they can assign their personal life, their dating life, their love life to me and say, this is what I'm looking for. And then I go and I find the people, and then all they have to do is show up on the date. And then, there doesn't become that problem of, oh, he's at your gym, or, having to scroll through hundreds of people, or be insecure that your profile's up there and did your boss see it or whatever. This is more of a very private, exclusive way of meeting someone, so it works for a certain type of person, but then there's other people who really like to use the apps. And so that's great too. The one thing that apps really did for my business is that it made people much more accepting of alternative ways of meeting someone. So prior to the apps, people were more hush hush about how they would meet someone. They might not be so open to say, oh, I'm using online dating or I'm using a matchmaker or whatnot. But now that everybody is either on an app or has a friend who's on an app, everybody's very talkative about, oh, I do this, I do that. Oh, I met someone here. I was on this app or whatever. And with matchmakers using someone like me, it becomes like the Rolls Royce of dating. So if you can actually hire an expert, then it's of another level than just using the apps.
So with hiring you, what are the requirements that either the person, or what are the requirements that the person has to fill out? Is there paperwork? Tell us about the process.
Well, the process is that people contact me and then they fill out a questionnaire and they kind of talk to me about who they're looking for. And a lot of times it just comes down to expectations, of what they're looking for and whether or not I think I can deliver and if I think that they're really ready and whatnot. I mean, it's really kind of a whole process that we go through, and every person is a little bit different when I speak to them. So it's really like a very personalized case-by-case basis service.
And the reason I asked that is because I have a friend that did this in Atlanta, and I don't know, it was an executive search firm. And they actually had to send in tax documents. They had to do blood work. So I didn't know if any of those kind of things
for matchmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't take anybody's blood.
Yeah. Well, they were actually that. Yeah. I found that.
I don't really like blood that much. I don't take any for it. I don't ask for it.
Yeah. I found that very interesting, but it was super in depth. It was very expensive. But it was, tax documents.
My service is very in depth, but not for that kind of stuff. It's more like really getting to know the person and understanding who they are, who they're not, who they're looking for, and really understanding, the definitions of any adjective that they use, because for me, it's about being on the same wavelength and understanding what they're saying. So if somebody says, I want someone who's smart, I need to understand, well, what does smart mean to you? If they want somebody who's athletic, what does that mean to you? So it's a lot of spending time getting to know the person so that I really understand what they're looking for and who they are, and verifying them, obviously. But most of the people that I work with are very high profile, so they're highly verifiable. So making sure that they are who they are and that sort of thing.
I think the blood work was from a sexually transmitted disease standpoint, and tax documents were making sure, because it was such a high level, these people were looking for millionaires, billionaires. And I guess I had no idea that something like that was out there. So it is what it is. It's the world we live in.
I know. Well, so Samantha,
you can have whatever you want.
That's right. And I think that, different strokes, like that's what Samantha was saying. Like for some people, that's what they want. And it's all different things that happen. I think that, your profession, Samantha, you're probably very much like a therapist in many ways when people come to you. So, I mean, obviously, people have all different definitions of, like you said, smart or athletic or whatever it is. Is there a common theme of people, though, that are coming to you and you kind of feel like every day I say the same thing or something like that? Or how would you coach somebody to want to be in a relationship or to be a good partner? Are there things that are consistently good lessons for our audience to learn about being a good partner?
Well, so I would say there are a few common themes. I mean, one is that most of the people who come to me are dating intentionally. So that's sort of a new phrase that everybody's using these days about dating. And people who are coming to me, at least they say, or at least they think that they're dating intentionally, which means that they're looking for a real relationship that could lead to marriage or a long-term relationship or whatever they're looking for. So people don't come to me and pay a lot of money to work with a matchmaker unless they're serious about wanting to be with someone. So that's definitely one of the most basic common themes. In terms from a coaching perspective, a lot of people, they don't spend enough time, I think, thinking about what they're bringing to the table. It's very quick to come up with a million reasons why someone else isn't for them, or someone else didn't do the right thing, or someone else has some flaw. instead of considering that, but also considering what's going on with themselves. So I think that there are different ways to date and there are different ways to put yourself out there. And so what I try to do is help people understand what are the things about you that are your assets, things that you really want to lead with and kind of put to the table first, and what are the things about you that are more detractors. So they're not terrible things, but they're things that might want to come up on date 2 or date 3 or date 4, right? Because you only have a limited amount of time to sit with somebody and for them to get to know you. And because of the dating apps these days, people are going out on a lot of dates. So they could be out with you for the evening. They could be out with you for 2 hours. They could think that it's great. You could think that it's great. You seem to have all these connections, but then you go home and they compare and contrast you with all the other people that they've dated in the past 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, well, she was terrific, but not for me. Right. And then all of a sudden you never hear from that guy again and you don't understand it because you thought you had this terrific date and then he ghosts you. And a lot of times that's because he's comparing you to some of the other people that he's been out with, and he's trying to determine, are you a real contender? So he might think that you're a terrific person, but that doesn't mean that you're a great contender for him. So when you get to the table, you want to make sure that you put your best foot forward. You only get one chance to make a good first impression. And so if you start with all the negative things about you, or if you're in a bad mood, or you didn't have time to brush your hair, or you're wearing an outfit that you don't like, or you're complaining about your mom, or you're complaining about your boss, or you're complaining about your ex, or all these different things, these are things that are not attractive on the date. And so then those are things that are detracting from him being able to get to know how fabulous you really are. And everybody's fabulous in different ways. And so I spend a lot of time saying, if somebody needs it, okay, let's think about the best things about you. And that's what I want you to lead with on the date. And my clients are very high profile, highly successful, like well-known gazillionaire type people. So a lot of them don't need as much coaching in that area, but some of them talk about the wrong things. Some of them don't realize that they're coming across in an inappropriate way or not in a positive way or whatever it is. And so because I'm on their team, so to speak, and because I'm in their court and I really want them to find the right person, then I have, a front row view of what's happening. And so I give them feedback and I help them become better daters.
So if somebody was to go out on a date, do they fill out a form of talking? It's like, how does the feedback come in? Or they call you or somebody, and then how would you guide somebody to be a better dater, be a better partner, all of those things? How does that work out?
So the feedback comes in by text and by having a conversation. So I have different types of relationships with different clients. And so I have some clients who are very touchy-feely, and they not in a touchy-feely way, but like they want conversation. And they want us to really connect. And so they want us to talk on the phone, maybe get together and have a drink and debrief or that sort of thing. Definitely not touchy-feely.
Right.
Number 2, there's other kinds of people who want just to give me kind of the bare bones of, oh, it was a great date, I'm going to see her again, or, oh, it wasn't a good date, let's move on, or whatever. But, I try to get a lot of feedback from the person who they're out with. And then if I think that I found out something that would help them for their own dating or for their next date, then we'll have a conversation about it.
It's funny when the second date with my husband, and I'm not going to disclose what he
was very touchy-feely.
No. The first date, he was very touchy-feely. We were at a restaurant and he came in, he kissed me and I'm like, oh, what are you doing? But anyway, my
husband did that. My husband did that too, but I liked it.
I was mortified. And we were at a restaurant in Charlotte and at the bar and I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm getting ready to kiss you. And I'm like, oh, no, you're not. He said, oh, before the night's over, I will be kissing you. I'm like, not at this restaurant, you won't.
Well, wait, so by the time you got to the end of the night, did you want to kiss him?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we kissed for 30 minutes in the car. Are you kidding me? I didn't even want to drive home, and I had an hour drive home. But the second date, let's talk about that. The second date, this guy unloaded on me. He literally told me everything that would make you run on the second date. But having said that, I totally respected him for it because he knew right then, he said that he really liked me. And he wanted me to know exactly what I was going to be, what I was dealing with or what happened, in his past or whatever. So he put everything out on the table for me to be able to make a decision whether or not, based on the things that he told me or about 5 things, whether or not, going forward that I would be the person for him or want to continue to date him. And I have to respect him for that because some of those things I was like, oh God, you just gave me a heart attack. But anyway, so, you can look at that one of 2 ways. You can look at things and then get to really fall in love or really like someone and not know some of the things that maybe you need to know about in their life. And then you're already like kind of sucked in, if you will, in liking them. And then they throw this on you. So I respected him for doing that on the second date because it was a lot.
But what happens a lot in dating is that a lot of people have kind of these laundry lists in their heads of things that they want and that they don't want, deal breakers, things that are very important to them. But then when you get to the table, chemistry is always the intangible. And if you have chemistry with the person, then they can basically vomit terrible things like you just said your husband did. But because you liked him, you rationalize all the things away and you're like, yeah, he's an ex-murderer, but that's okay because he's hot. He's
or he can kiss really well. Yeah.
but I really like him anyway. I'm really attracted to men over 6 feet. This guy's only 5'6", but that's okay because I just feel a connection to him or whatever it is. And so this is what happens all the time. I see this all the time where I'm working with people. They come to me, they give me a list of things they want, they don't want, things that they call deal breakers. And then sometimes they wind up with the person that has the stuff that they've said, but sometimes they move on to somebody who's completely different from what they said and exactly the deal breakers that they said that they would never be with because of chemistry. And so that kind of happens. And, as advice coming from me, who's an expert, I think that it's terrible form to sit down at the table and bare your soul like that because a lot of people will run to the hills and a lot of people won't stick around even if you're an amazing kisser. But some people do it anyway. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule. I say don't have sex on the first date, but lots of people have sex on the first date and marry that person. So there's exceptions to every rule. But what I try to do is tell people to play the odds. And you're better off showing up at the date and making a really good first impression and keep that first impression going until the person's mad about you. And when they're totally into you and they're totally whatever, then you can let it all out. And you can let them know you're crazy. You can let them know all your secrets. You can let them know everything. But you can't do that at the beginning. You're taking too much of a chance by doing that.
So Samantha, you're super funny and obviously I've known you for a very long time. But I would imagine though that being funny, even in this whole life of making relationships happen and love, are there moments where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore? Or do you have any of those moments where you're like, I can't even be funny, I can't enjoy this? Or has it really just been a great ride for 25 years?
I mean, everybody has their ups and downs. That's why they call it work. It's work, obviously. I mean, I love my business because it's a happy business. I love when people fall in love. I love when people get married. I love going to all the weddings. I love when people call me after the date and go on and on about how great it was. A few weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and a woman had contacted me, and she's the daughter of a couple that I introduced. And she contacted me on Instagram and she stayed in touch with me and in touch with me and in touch with me. And I posted something that I was in Washington, D.C. on my Instagram, and she contacted me again and she said, I live in Washington. I have to meet you. You're the whole reason why I exist. I have to meet you. And I'll come meet you for 5 minutes. I'll meet you anywhere. I'll meet you for lunch, insisting. And of course, I was so happy and excited to meet her. So she came to our hotel and I met her, and then she did an adorable video, like thanking me, how, she's heard about me and she's so fascinated by it. And I'm the reason why she's here, and her sister, and on and on and on. So of course, like, that's so meaningful. And, that feels so wonderful to hear stuff like that. And so, I get that a lot. Or when a client's like ringing my phone at 1:00 in the morning to, because they're so excited that they were out for 5 hours, I'm sleeping. So I'm not excited for the ring, but then when I answer the phone just to make sure that nothing terrible happened, and they go on and on about what a great time they had, then that's great. But then I have other people who are more difficult, or have unrealistic expectations, or where I set them up on dates that should be perfect and then they're not because they screw it up on their own, which a lot of people do. So, it ebbs and flows.
Well, so it's interesting because actually, when I hear you talk about the past 25 years of your career, you've created a romance and a relationship with your own business. So there are days when you're in a relationship that you're just like, oh, I'm very frustrated or whatever. But it's beautiful to hear you. I mean, obviously, we've been friends for quite a while. So, but it's great. And I'm so happy for you that you've been able to fall in love with your business as much as you've been able to create other relationships along the way. So maybe just are there some basic tips or style tips or just relationship tips that are generic that people could follow, like Samantha's table, a couple rules to live by kind of things?
Well, I think that it's important to be with somebody who you really connect with, and one of the ways that I look at that is if you find the same things annoying and laugh at the same things. And so I think that that's sort of looking at things differently than other people are like, oh, what do we have in common? And that's great. I'm a big fan of commonalities, but at the same time, you want to think about, well, if you're out with this person in 10 years and you're at an event and you start talking to someone and you feel like you want to blow your brains out because you find that person to be so boring. And then you go home with your partner and your partner was like, wasn't that person so great? Let's make dinner plans with them and whatever. And you're just completely on different pages instead of on the same page. Like, that's not a good partner for you, and then you also want to be in a situation where you go to see a movie and you're both hysterically laughing at it because you both think it's funny. You don't want it to be that he's sitting there hysterically laughing and you're like, oh my God, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, and you're leaving, so you really want to kind of be on the same page. And so that's, I think, something to think about when you're looking for a partner. Another thing that two more pieces of advice. And so on the second page of my book is a quote from my grandmother where she always told me that if you get invited, you go, because you never know who you're going to meet. And that's something that I've been living my life about since I'm probably 15 years old. It started when I was 15 when I went to an all-girls school and a boy from another school invited me to a dance. And I didn't like him. I liked a different boy. And I didn't want to go with that particular boy who invited me. And my grandmother said to me, you're going. If you get invited, you go, because you never know who you're going to meet. And so I went to the dance because my grandmother said so. And my mother said, you have to go. And when I got there, I got to talk to the boy who I was interested in. And so something came from it. And ever since then, I'm always doing that. And so I think that when you're single, when you're dating, or if you're looking for work opportunities, whatever it is, you go out there, you meet people, you see what can happen, because 9 times out of 10, something comes out of that. So that's, another thing that I live by. So, and the last one is I have something called an 85% rule. And that's basically when you're dating, if you meet somebody who has 85% of the things that you're looking for in a partner, you should run, not walk to the altar. And a lot of people don't think that 85% is enough. And so they wind up throwing back 85%. And they go fish again and they start dating someone again. And guess what? That person now also has 85%, just different 85%. So when you find 85%, you have to remember that that's like a really good percentage in a person.
So what would you suggest? I mean, you're an entrepreneur and we love to highlight women in business and things like that. How would you tell somebody if they were going to start a business, whatever it is, what would you tell them? Just how would you encourage somebody to start their own business?
Well, I think that you have to pick something that you're passionate about. And you have to make sure that if you get rejected a few times that you don't give up. I think that a lot of people, they'll go out there and they'll, try a half dozen times, let's say. And after a half dozen times, they're like, oh, this isn't going to work because I asked 6 people and 6 people said no. So I'm giving up, and I think that you can't do that. You have to be able to ask 50 people or 75 people or 100 people. You have to keep asking and asking and asking. There's always another person to ask to help you. There's always another person who could be interested in what you have to say or what you want to do. You also have to have a lot of confidence in yourself. So if you believe in yourself and you believe in what you're trying to do, then you can find other people who can believe in that too. You have to be very passionate about what you want to do and let that passion shine through, So like I said, when we first started talking, if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you approach people and you say, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, and this is what I'm looking to have happen, then you'd be surprised that people step up and they actually say, oh, I want to help you. And sometimes that's intimidating. I mean, I find that too. There's people who I want to reach out to, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, if I reach out to that person, are they going to be receptive? Are they going to answer? Are they going to think I'm silly? Are they going to make fun of me behind my back? I mean, even as a successful business owner, woman, entrepreneur, person, I still feel that way from time to time, but I still say to myself, you know what? The worst they can say is no, or the worst they can do is ignore me, and then there'll be someone else, and I can't really take it personally. You can't take so much stuff personally because people have a lot going on in their lives. So most people, unfortunately, are not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. They're dealing with their own stuff. So they don't have a lot of time for you. They don't have a lot of time to help you. So they might say, oh, I can help you. I want to do this for you. I'll be there for you. I'm going to step up. I'm going to whatever. But then 9 times out of 10, they don't do it. And the reason why they don't do it is maybe not anything personal to you, but just because they can't or because something came up in their lives. And so you have to be able to have thick skin and not take it personally, or take it personally for that moment and then take a step back and then get back to it. It's like with the New Year's resolutions, right? Everybody makes a gazillion New Year's resolutions. I did the same thing. New Year's of this year, I said, I'm going to go do videos every single day on Instagram. Guess what? It's October. I have not done that yet. Every morning I wake up and say, oh, maybe today will be the day that I'll follow my New Year's resolution. And then I don't, so you have to cut yourself a break and say, it's okay. And if you start your New Year's resolution in the 10th month of the year, who cares? At least you did it. Maybe you don't do it this year. Maybe you do it next year, whatever it is, but you just have to kind of go after what you want and keep trying.
All right. Now we talk about making videos and things. Social media, when you first started 25 years ago, Facebook wasn't around. I mean, how has social media changed your business or changed the dynamic of women and men and posting and not posting and, knowing too much about somebody before you meet them or knowing whatever it is? How has social media changed your business?
So social media is a mixed bag. I mean, as I said, I'm considered an OG in this business, but I feel like I'm an OG in life. And as much as I'm doing social media, I'm not as passionate about it as people who are 20 and 30 years old. I mean, they grew up on it. It's their bread and butter and it's important to them. So I have a lot of younger people, women. I only hire women because I feel very strongly about having a female business. And all the young women who come and work for me, they're always pushing. You have to do more social media. You have to do this. You have to do that. And on days I try to do more. I agree with them and whatever, but it's just not what my bread and butter is. And maybe the both of you feel that way too. So, for me, it's somewhat of a chore. I'm excited to post a picture of my daughter, or a video of her being cute. But for me to come up with like a whole platform about my business, it's not really my number one priority, even though maybe it should be. I'm frustrated by social media a lot because, 5-7 years ago, I would get hired to do these fabulous entrepreneurial campaigns for different consumer products and different companies and be spokesperson for lots of products. And they pay me so much money. I mean, for 1 day, 2 days of work. And I loved getting hired for those gigs. Now they're hiring young girls who have 3 million followers, who don't know anything about relationships, who don't know anything about dating, who aren't an expertise in the least, who aren't an author, who haven't been quoted in hundreds of things like I have on television. All the things that I've done doesn't matter because I don't have 3 million followers. And so I find that to be frustrating. And I'm hoping that at some point we'll get back to people valuing people for their experience and for their worth and for their expertise rather than just for their followers, because you can get a follower for anything. I mean, you can get a follower for just being disgusting on a video and then it's viral and then you get, 1 million followers from that. And then all of a sudden you're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to talk about things that you know nothing about. So that really frustrates me.
Yeah. So Alisa and I talk about that all the time. It's that, we've lived a life of, curating expert advice on many subjects. And obviously you're a professional matchmaker with, that is a published author and a TV show and all these things. And then a different generation is kind of hijacking the expertise that you have spent decades
building.
And so it is definitely, and again, but ultimately similar probably to matchmaking and the way that there will be, I think the fallout of that will happen. It's the same thing where if you were to set somebody up and then they were like, I like that shiny object. And then that shiny object doesn't necessarily, be able to have the relationship that the other person is looking for. So it kind of does, the rose-colored glasses, I guess, are on, but then they eventually do come off. I would like to think that.
Yeah, I mean, I like social media. I like to be able to put out my expertise. I like how quick it is, so I like that I can sit down with my camera and within 5 minutes, I could give you advice. The problem is that it takes me 3 hours to actually put out the advice. I'm not the person because I didn't grow up thinking that it's okay to sit on a video in my pajamas with no makeup on, with toothpaste on the side of my face. I care about how I look. And so whereas, the younger generation, they seem to be attracted to people who look like a disaster. I'm not comfortable putting myself out there looking like a disaster. So I spend time on it, even though I probably shouldn't spend time on it. So that aggravates me also. But I understand the lure of it and I'm fascinated by it. And I think that it's interesting that you can, I'm able to, when I'm doing my matches, I'm able to learn something about the people that I'm setting up in a different way than I used to be, so I'm very good. I'm like an investigator. I'm like, I can see things that other people don't see. So I can watch a video and obviously people are putting or trying to put out, their best foot forward, but sometimes I can notice things in their videos or who they follow or where they go or something about their lives that gives me insight into who they are as a person so that I can determine whether or not they'd be a good match for someone I'm working with. So I think that gives me something that I wasn't able to have before. But the whole expertise things, and I like your expression, I actually might steal that one, but I don't like that they're hijacking my expertise because that's just crazy.
Or trying to figure out the algorithm. That drives me more crazy. I agree
with that too, the algorithm thing.
It changes every day.
some mornings I wake up and I say, oh, I'm going to watch a podcast, or I'm going to watch a video on YouTube that explains to me, how the algorithm works or whatever. So I start that video and I'm kind of fascinated with it. But then I realize that the video is coming out of Indonesia and they have a different computer system than we have. And the thing that they're using isn't exactly lined up to what I'm using. I can't really figure out exactly where that button is and whatever. And then I get frustrated and I'm off the YouTube. So, and then sometimes I'll hire these young women who are just out of college, because a lot of them major in social media, they major in marketing and whatever. And so I love when they teach me new things. I've become like a real expert at Canva, for example, because one of the young women taught it to me, but everybody's using CapCut right now. And so that's like the new one that I'm trying, to really master. And I haven't really done a great job of that, so I find that a bit frustrating, but that's why you bring young people into your company, and then I kind of just let them do it. But I'm also somebody who likes learning things, so I'm fascinated with it myself. So I find that I'm spending too much time on it a little bit, trying to learn it myself instead of just delegating. I think that I wish I could be a better delegator.
Yeah. Well, it's social media. It's hard. And it's hard to delegate social media too, because like what you find appealing about the video that you made or what you think looks good, somebody else, it's all very arbitrary with social media and trying to get your image out there and sustain your brand. So, you've had this brand, Samantha, for 25 years. What happens in the next 20 years with Samantha's Table? So, first of all, and congratulations, because 25 years to do anything is almost impossible. It's virtually impossible to sustain something for 25 years and to continue the momentum. So bravo. What's next?
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. No, it feels like yesterday when I started the business, and then it's almost 25 years. So it's crazy. For me, I've been focusing more on entrepreneurial things within, the dating, romance, and relationship space. So whereas I'll always have my matchmaking, and have my bespoke matchmaking service, I'm moving into different areas where I try to do more entrepreneurial things, where I do, podcasts and YouTube videos. And I've been speaking a lot at conferences, and, really what I really love to do is give advice. And so that's really my true passion. And so I, really like going to conferences and being live and speaking, to hundreds of people and having them ask me questions and being able to really interact with them and, feel like I make a difference for people. So that's really what I'm kind of always trying to go in that direction of being able to just give people advice and really, because I'm sitting in the middle of all of it, so I'm listening to women talk about what works, what doesn't work. I'm listening to men talk about what works and what doesn't work. And whereas people a lot of times don't believe it, like they want, if a woman goes out on a date with a man and he doesn't like her, then she just wants to label him as commitment phobic, because it's easier just to say, well, there's something wrong with him, than to really think about, well, why didn't it work? And I like to really help people look at it. My favorite thing for someone to say to me is, wow, I never thought about it that way. Oh, I'm going to approach it that way next time. So I think that I like making a difference in that way.
So just to clarify, because you're in New York City, so any of our listeners can contact you no matter where they live in the U.S., correct?
Yeah. So the best way of being in touch with me is, to connect with me on Instagram, even though I'm dissing social media, but I'm on it, every single day, giving advice and posting matchmaking alerts and posting cute pictures of my daughter. And my Instagram is Samantha Daniels Official. So that's always an easy way to connect with me. And then they can also connect with me over my website, which I'm sure you guys will provide, but it's samanthastable.com. And they can fill out a questionnaire there. And they can also, I do dating coaching sessions through an app called Intro. And they can find that on my website where they can actually sign up for a session with me. So they can talk to me for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, and they can ask me for advice. I can go over their dating app profile with them. They can introduce themselves to me so I can put them into my database. Like there's lots of things that they can do with me directly.
That's wonderful. So Samantha, when you're meeting with somebody, and they come in, is it similar to like how somebody would be on a date where they would, where you can immediately see that person and be like, I can assess, do you think that you can assess people quickly, or like how quickly can you do that when you're, as a matchmaker?
So, I have a very good radar to really understand who someone is and who they're not. And so when I sit with them, I get a really good sense of them very quickly. I mean, I've met with, thousands of people over the years. And so very quickly, I just get somebody. I ask a lot of questions. I ask a lot of specific questions. I also like to just connect with somebody. And so it's not just an interview where I'm asking them question after question after question. It's really an exchange, and just a chit chat and finding something that the person and I have in common. So whether it's travel, a lot of times with travel, I've traveled extensively all over the world and I've lived a lot of places. I speak a lot of languages. And so I find that a lot of times we can connect over that, where we can talk about someplace we've been or someplace we want to go or someplace we enjoyed. And so that puts them at ease, because they feel like, oh, we have this in common. And so then they open up more. And so, I have different ways that I really connect with someone.
That's great. All right. So in closing, Samantha, we're going to obviously share all the details of how people can connect with you. What do you love about love?
Well, what I love about love is that most of the time it makes people very happy. And so I love seeing happy people, and it just makes people feel so warm and comfortable, and it protects them to a certain extent to make them feel like they have someone in their corner. And I think that just from a health perspective, the more people you have around you and the more connections that you have and the more love and affection, there have been so many studies that show that really keeps people healthy and helps people live longer and all of that. And so, with my daughter, we try to do a 20-second hug every single night before she goes to sleep. We actually count it out because they say that if you hug somebody for 20 seconds or more, that it actually causes like the endorphins and all the chemical reactions and whatever in your body. And so she knows about that. So we kind of do it in a cute way. We're moving back and forth, counting to 20, but it just feels so nice. And I feel that, and I do that. I try to do that with my husband as well. Obviously I might hug my daughter a million other times during the day, but at least like right before she goes to bed, I have her stand up on her bed and we hug. And so that really feels nice. And I think that's what love is all about. Just feeling that warmth from another person and that connection. Relationships aren't easy. I mean, Marnie said it, like they ebb and they flow. So some mornings you might wake up and look at the person laying next to you and you think to yourself, oh my God, I love him. I love her so much. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that we're together. And then some mornings you might wake up and say, I can't stand you. I hate you. What are you doing here? I don't want you here anymore. I just want to be by myself. And I think that every relationship has all of the emotions everywhere from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. And that's normal, so you want to find that. But I think that, because they say love and hate are very close. And so if you feel the love or you feel the hate, that means you're feeling something. When you're in a relationship and you just become numb to it and you just don't feel anything anymore, then that basically usually means that the relationship is over. So, love is just, it's powerful. And, I'm very fortunate to be able to work in the love business.
And it's true. And I love what you said about it really being, I don't think years ago we considered relationships being part of like the mental wellness part of that, of love, the hugging and just being connected to somebody really does reset your entire system. And so it's a great thing that you're sharing that with your daughter at a young age, that she understands what really is mind, body, and spirit, what is love versus just
Telling
physical
someone,
connection
or
of
just-
love.
or telling someone that you love
Yeah,
them.
no, I think that that's important for everyone, to understand that. And I think that, I spend a lot of time reading about all different things and, really understanding what works. And I think that affection is important, telling people that you love them, but I think that, you have to use it sparingly too, because if you're a person who says to every single person that, I love you, I love you, I love you, then it doesn't mean anything, so I think that it's important to use the I love you when you really feeling it, and teach that to your children as well, where there's a time and a place and you can have affection for someone, but love is special, and you don't want to diminish that and make it that, the guy at the grocery store gave you an extra bag, and so then you say, oh, I love you, thank you so much for doing that, and then your daughter thinks, oh, well, I should just say I love you to everyone. I mean, they need to understand too that love is reserved for true feelings.
And I think you also have to pay attention to what people do instead of always what they say, because there's a lot of people that say a lot of things and they don't do those things, right?
Right. So you have to be able, actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely.
And so I think a lot of times it comes down to what people actually do rather than what they say. But there's some of both of it. You have to be able to verbalize how you feel and also
100%,
express how you feel, so it comes both ways, and I think that when I'm helping people with their dating, I have had lots of people who have gotten married to people that I've set them up with, but I've also had situations where people I've worked with have actually found someone on their own during the time that they're working with me. And that's because of all the advice that I've given them, and because they've actually changed their mindset during the time that we're working together, and they're coming across differently. And so then they're bringing different people into their energy and into their orbit because they're putting themselves out there differently. So we could talk about this forever, but
I know. Well, so I guess, we're going to echo the words of your grandmother. Thank you for joining. You were invited and you showed up. So thank you to your grandmother for giving you that wisdom. And thank you for joining us, Samantha. It's always great to listen to you and to hear your enthusiasm for really, truly making a difference. And I know you're out there doing all the work and the actual, setting the example for being a great mom and a great entrepreneur. And, I know that I'm proud of you, because I have been able to watch you mature and grow, and hopefully you feel the same about me. But, it's definitely great when your friends succeed. There's nothing more fun than watching your friends get all the things that they want in their life. Like, to me, that is the best reward for having friends, is watching them thrive and grow and cultivate their own dreams and destinies. So it's really been fun listening to you and watching you and your family on social media, which I think you do really well. We're our own worst critics. So I think you do a great job of it.
Oh, well, thank you. No, thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun. And so Marnie and I, we've known each other for a very long time. We grew up together back in Philadelphia. And then we grew up together all through being single and being married and all of those things. But I remember when Marnie first started talking about writing books and being a speaker and doing all the things that she does. And then she's done it all. So that's also super impressive. And I've sort of seen from the beginning until now that she's so confident, and she puts out these books and she does so much to help people. And so it's also so nice to see all the things that Marnie's accomplished too. So kudos to you, Marn.
Thank you, Samantha. Well, we have big shoes to fill, so we're doing it. And that's what's so great, is that we are actually picking up, I'll use a football metaphor, the ball of our family and running with it. And so that is great. And thank you for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another great episode of Bench to Bold. Really bold things are happening here. So thank you. I'm Marnie.
And I'm Alisa.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.